we are live. If all goes well, we should be live on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube as well. So hello from everywhere. My name's Lala Angela Wang. If we have never met, I work in construction by day in Sydney, Australia. And I also have my own business called The Womanly Way. Essentially, it is to help women, especially women who desire to step into leadership, to really connect with our most authentic inner voice and stepping up to become leaders of our world in our own way. So the womanly way to me isn't just the womanly way. It's not my way. It's not the way, but it's finding your way so you can step into your highest version of you in the most freeing and authentic way. And really, my mission is to help all of us to be more connected to our divine feminine and to that community. I would say it's like a awakened community with traditional values. And yeah, I think that's definitely a different podcast or different discussion for another day. So um I thought today we will actually talk about, how did I reconnect with my self. How I think self-love really for me is about reconnecting with myself, and also reconnect with joy. Now, I do get a bit excited whenever I jump on. I sometimes forget that these are also going into my podcast that is launching very shortly. Initially, it was to be launched tomorrow, which is on my 40th birthday. But I've decided to, well, number one, we need to get the back end stuff sorted. But I've also decided that my celebration for my birthday is going to be a month long because I'm going home to New Zealand on the 17th of April, and I'm going to stay there for 2 weeks. And to me, that's probably really when I decide to celebrate my birthday. I've got a series of things that I plan to celebrate with friends and family, and because everyone's busy, right? Yeah, I just feel like for this big occasion going into my 40s, I decided to celebrate a whole month. I've actually started celebrating since last month because my Chinese birthday was actually so on the Chinese calendar on my Chinese birthday, it was actually the 28th of February. But I've decided the official celebration actually starts right now, and then it's going to last until I come back from New Zealand. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting things that are coming out. So keep your eye on the space if you want to find out all the things that's happening in my life and all the things that I am super excited about. Hopefully you will be super excited about as well. Okay. So that's reset, and let's start the podcast content of this. Okay, so welcome to this episode of the Womanly Way podcast. I am your host, Lala Angela Wang. I work in construction by day, and I also have my own business. I call it a mentoring business because whatever that I teach, whatever that I mentor, whatever that I talk about are generally things that I have experienced myself. So I am a mentor for women who desire to step into leadership and really supporting women to tap into their leadership potential. through a very feminine way. I truly, truly believe my purpose in this lifetime is to build communities founded on a bunch of people or people who have the divine feminine reawakened and reconnected within them. And that's men and women, right? But I truly, truly believe in order to awaken divine feminine in men, we first need to awaken and reconnect the divine feminine in women, in our female population. So that's why my purpose is really to support women to reconnect with our divine feminine, and then that way we can tap into our most authentic self, our highest expression, and stepping into leadership in our highest expression. So today's topic, I really, really want to talk about my journey to self-love, to reconnecting with myself, and how I then reconnect with joy. It's a bit, I guess, timing wise, it's a bit like I'm kind of reflecting back the past 10 years, because my 30s, I would say, would be probably the most eventful decade in my life. I feel like in my 30s, I have rebirth. I've died and rebirth. I don't know how many times and over. I was going to say a million times, but that's probably over exaggerating. But many, many, many times and over. My 30s is when I really have my dark night of the soul. I really had to dig deep and find out who I am. And I really feel like, this might be a little bit of cliche, but my life before the first 31 years of my life, somehow it sometimes kind of feel like it's like a lifetime ago. And I feel like in my 30s, I have created this brand new life, brand new me that is so much more in alignment. And it really, like, the only word I could use is I feel like I've died and rebirthed. I've been given a second opportunity. And really part of the reason I start to step into this mentoring space is really so I can share my story, and hopefully no one will ever have to go through what I have been through ever again. So you might be asking, like, what is all this, right? Why is it so important, and why do I need it to, I guess, reconnect with myself, and why do I need to learn self-love? And I really have to sort of set the scene by saying, I really want you to, whenever we're looking into our lives, and even whenever I'm looking back in my lives, there's no blame. There's never an inch of me that blames any person involved, including myself. There's no hatred and there's no anger, right? Really looking at this from a very objective perspective and go, well, these are the events that lead to what happens. And these are the lessons that I was meant to learn in order to step into whatever I'm stepping into right now. So I was born in a little island called Taiwan. That's a little island next to China, between China and America, really. And I had the first 12 years of my life in Taiwan. My family moved to New Zealand when I was 12, and I did most of my studies there, basically. So, through to high school, and I studied architecture in university, moved to Australia when I finished my architecture degree. And back then, I was like, you know what? I think for me to become a better architect, I want to learn more about project management. And I was brilliant at it. Out of all of my university subjects, when I was studying architecture, I was acing all of the project management papers. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and do a master's in construction project management. And I thought I was going to study in Australia because there's no construction project management degrees in New Zealand. And I really thought I was going to do it for a year and then go home to New Zealand and become an architect. It didn't quite happen that way. I started working for a construction company, and really the rest is history. I've been in construction in Australia for the past 15 years, and I absolutely loved it. And I never really, like, to be honest, for the first 30 years of my life, I never really thought about self-love, right? It was never a thing. Personal development was never a thing. I was into personal development books without knowing that it's called personal development since I was probably about 10. I remember my mom bought the very first personal development book written in Mandarin or Chinese for me, and I just completely fell in love with it, about why people behave a certain way and how we can react to situations that can just change the trajectory of situations, right? And I've always been fascinated with people and behavior and anything that explains why a person is who they are. You know, I used to read books like Men from Mars and Women from Venus, or why men can never find things. I can't remember the name of the book. Why men can never find things and women can't read a map, or something like that. And I love astrology. I love all the like systems that allow you to know yourself more. But I never thought they were personal development, or they were, you know, all the things that were going to lead me to better understand myself. I was just fascinated. I was just, you know, fascinated to understand why people are the way they are. And coming from a very disciplined family, so I come from a military family where, you know, my dad served in the army, and, you know, my grandparents, obviously, my granddad, both side of the family served in the military. In Taiwan back then, military service is compulsory. So I came from a very strict background. And one of the things that my family had taught me is logical and discipline and very goal oriented, right? So before I turned 30, I had a set of goals. I want to get married. I want to have a house in the suburbs, you know, have my own car, and have a six-figure salary. I had all that by the time I turned 30. In fact, I often share the story. How I got to six-figure in my salary was I went to the owner of the business and the manager that I was working for, both of them. I invited them for breakfast to catch up. And I said to them, look, at the end of breakfast, I said, look, I'm turning 30 next week. And I had a few things that I would love to tick off. And really, I only have one last thing that I need to tick off, and that is to have a certain amount in salary. And I told them it's 110,000 in Australian. Knowing if you want to negotiate something, never give someone your bottom line, right? So I said 110. They came back with 100K, and I said no, 105. And that was my salary. Going into my 30s, when I turned 30, that was my salary, and I was so proud. I remember just like feeling so ecstatic that I've ticked all the boxes. But what I very soon realized was that happiness was very short-lived, right? Same thing with getting married, same thing with all the things that I wanted. That happiness was so short-lived. It's almost like you get a high and then that was it, right? When the drug, when the, all the things fade off, that was it. And I couldn't figure out why. I just know that ever since I got married, ever since I got promoted, I feel more and more sad. I feel more and more angry. And I just become this really miserable person that I don't even want to be around with. And I remember we've got our house, our home used to be 2 stories. And on the weekend, I would lock myself downstairs it's almost like a private retreat there and just watch TV and do nothing. And I was so angry with my ex-husband all the time, to the point 2 years after we were married, and that was Christmas 2014. To the point it was so obvious. He was like, "What's wrong?" And I literally said to him, what I realized that when you proposed to me, I said yes because I didn't want to say no. One, I want to be married, but two, also, I didn't want to disappoint anybody, right? This was the most unromantic guy I've ever dated. And he has arranged the most romantic surprise on our anniversary. He had a rose. No, did he have rose petals? Maybe not. But he had like a love heart laid path from the hotel. Like, it was at the Hilton Hotel. He had a love heart laid out path with our photos, with like balloons and things. It said, "Would you marry me?" And then we were going to watch Wicked, the musical, after. And in my head, I just remember everything went into slow motion when he proposed to me. And I was like, no, 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 I don't know if I can do this. But in my heart, also was like, well, I have to say yes. If I don't, he's going to be disappointed. I'm going to ruin our night. I'm going to ruin the stay at the Hilton. And then tomorrow he's going to go and tell his mom. I'm going to, she's not going to be happy about it. And that was a pretty big realization. And I just remember saying to him, look, I just need to be able to think clearly. My suggestion is that, can we just don't live under the same house? I'm happy to move out and pay for my own rent for a little while. And then we'll regroup after a certain period of time. And that Christmas, he went home to Taiwan to see his mum. I went home to New Zealand. And that's pretty much that's the theme of our marriage, right? We live a very separate life when it comes to public holidays, because each of us individually prefer to spend New Year's and Christmas with our own family. But when we came back from the holidays, my ex-husband literally said to me, he's like, I was so miserable thinking about what happened before Christmas. I literally can't take this anymore. So if you want to move out, we are separating. And then we're going for a divorce. And so that was it. And really, that had put me, like, a lot of people would have thought, right now I'm happy. I'm out of the marriage that I didn't like. But the truth is, I was so miserable. I was so miserable because for the first time in my life, I was on my own, like completely on my own. All of my close friends are overseas. My 2 very best friends are in Asia. And my parents are all overseas, obviously. I was here in Australia all on my own. And it's funny, right? The moment that these things happened, like, you realize who your true friends are, not because who showed up for you, but who you're willing to reach out to. And it was really, really hard because I felt so alone. Like, in the past, I had, I was living at home, or I had housemates, or I was living with my ex-husband. So I've never like purely alone, right? And when we got separated, being at home was like the hardest thing. So going to work at least distracts me. But coming home all on my own was really the hardest thing. I could drink 2 glasses of wine a day. That's massive for me because I'm a lightweight. Like normally a glass would knock me out, and I'll have 2 just so I could go to bed each night. But I think this is when, you know, I'm gonna say the training, but what my family and what the values and the strength that was passed down to me through, you know, my family value, I guess, has given me the strength. Because there were so many times it was like, if I just jump off my balcony, I was on the 6th floor, I think, but just jump off my balcony, all would be over. But they are like, I keep thinking about my parents and how upset they would be. And there's also this voice going, well, is that it? Right? Is that it? And it was just this one day. It's almost like, it's a bit like a flick of a switch. I just literally decided enough is enough. I'm going to go out and start socializing. And I was in a group. Went to a group that I had registered before the separation. Can't really remember what it's called, but I remember vividly that day we were talking about some of our favorite things. And one of the lady talked about a book called Fish. And she talked about how even though it's an HR book, it had changed her mindset completely. I went home, I bought the book, I read it cover to cover. And that was my light bulb moment. I realized, I get to create the narrative that I want to create in my life. And no one ever told me that. No one really ever told me that before. I never really thought, about how I can actually create the narrative. I get to decide how I want my life to be. And it is from that point onwards, it was as if, because I made the decision, the universe has backed me. Opportunities after opportunity come up for me to improve myself. I hired myself a relationship coach. I started personal development. I started going into learning about neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and really changed my life. But they were also very surface, right? I remember at the same time that I started personal development, I also started my first business. And I remember talking to my business coach the first time, and he was like, starting your business is like personal development, right? So what you need to do is go and work on yourself. And I remember saying to him, but I just worked the last 6 months. That's all I did the last 6 months. What do you mean I need to work on myself some more? I didn't get it back then, but now like I'm completely living in, now this is my reality. I get it. Like personal development is not like a fat diet where you just go, I'm just going to do it for 6 months and that's it. It's a lifestyle, right? If you choose to step on this path, it's a lifestyle that we all choose to live by. And so you do it every single day. There's no that, I can do it for a year and then not do it. And just my life will be wonderful. But even through doing it every time that I face new challenges, there are always new things to learn. There are always old wounds that will come up. And one of the things that continue to come up for me is this notion of self-love. It's this notion of setting boundaries and, allowing myself to love myself first and not allowing other people to dictate or allowing other people to take over. And it's not always easy. I think, I've trained, it's kind of like, for the first 32 years of my life, I was almost trained to put other people first, right? I used to call myself what did I call myself? I can't even remember now. A chronic people pleaser, right? I would people please to make people happy. And it's really easy for me being an empath. I could sense what people need and what is the best solution for this person to make them happy. And I am able to morph myself into that version, or just make other people happy. But in the end, I would be the one that's miserable. I would be the one that's angry and not knowing why. So for me, like, my anger has become almost like a barometer of how I'm putting other people first. So if you experience the same thing, maybe, that might be a good tip to check. Whenever you're angry, are you really angry at yourself, or are you angry at other people? And for me, 99% of the time, I'm actually angry at myself for sacrificing what I want to do to make other people happy, right? So my personal development journey started when I was 32. And gradually and continually through, experimenting a lot, I started dating in my early 30s a lot, just experiencing life. But through every failed relationship, I learned more about myself and what self-love really meant to me, and what putting myself first really meant to me. And also starting to find my voice. I don't know, I think it's less in Western societies, but in Asian or Asia, I feel like the school system suppresses individuality and voice, and our own voice, a lot more. So in my early years, I used to find it really, really hard to express what I feel, what I thought, or what I think. But even now, like, I'm the kind of person I need to sit back, observe, and then digest, and then slowly come up with my own conclusion of things or my point of view. So even through all the work, it's still difficult for me at times, but at least now I know I can tell between my own voice and someone else's voice, right? And I just remember, like, because we're talking about my journey to self love and reconnecting with joy. It's not like I did personal development and it just happened, right? It's a gradual process. And even joy for me is understanding, what do I truly desire? And that has been like a theme throughout my 30s. And really, where I realized that this next level of self-love was probably in, I'm going to think, 2020, when we went into lockdown. And I remember that year was the year. So the word of the year for me, no, sorry, it was 2021. The word for the year for me was self-love. And it came to me as a download. And I was like, what do you mean self-love? I've worked on myself so much. I know what self-love is. And I just remember when I had that thought, that voice came back and said, the voice that told me, self-love was my word for the year. It then said, no, go and tap into the next level of self-love. So at the beginning of 2021, I literally tapped into all the things and went deeper into what self-love really means to me, or what the next level of self-love really means to me. And it was quite different to how it was before. I tap into a lot of rituals. There's a lot of rituals and ceremonies that I did with myself, include using cacao, sprays, oils, and also really establishing times and boundaries and space just for me. And you might be saying, like, some of you might be thinking, I'm at home with family, with kids. How do I establish that? And what I'm going to say to you is a lot of it is energetics, right? I have learned to really visualize my boundary, really visualize, say, for example, I'm at home, there's George, there's Scott, but I needed some time out. Then it's really about taking myself maybe to a room, maybe to a corner at home, and just establish that energetic boundary for that period of time where it's just me. And everything in that space is to nourish me. And that has really helped me. But also some days I just need to step away, maybe take myself for breakfast, maybe take myself for a flotation session, which I'm going to do tomorrow. Yay! Or a massage, or even acupuncture, or a walk. Anything that take you out of your day to day into a space where it's just you. It sounds basic, right? But that takes discipline. And that is setting boundaries, not only for other people around you, but also for yourself, right? To say, hey, I matter. And, it might be a set time that you set for yourself once a week to start with, or once every fortnight, right? And then gradually it becomes more often if you want to. For me, this time of the night, when the house is quiet, when Scott is still at work and George is asleep, this is the time for me. And quite often I will lay on George's playmat because it's super comfy, do some meditations, do a journaling exercise, and that just helps me reconnect with myself. But I really want to say, like, when I really stepped in and dig deep into more self-love, more care, that really happened is my tank was full, and it was so full, it was overflowing. Love was overflowing enough for me to then attract George into our lives, right? I did a series of self-love exercises, and I went to a 21-day thing where all I focused on was self-love. That was in April 2021. July 2021, I was pregnant with George on the 11th of July. Exactly 8 months before George came out and meet the world. And I truly, truly believe, right, opening myself up to more self-love and putting myself first was the necessary first step for me to attract George. Because as a mom, if I continue to put other people first, I will never have the energy, the strength, the ability to take care of my son. I will feel depleted, resentful, burnt out, all the things, because I wasn't putting myself first. And some people might think, like, how dare you as a first-time mom to put yourself first above your son? But this is the same mentality as putting your mask on first before you put on other people's masks, right? If I'm not surviving, if I'm not thriving, if I'm not happy, I'm not joyful, and I don't have the energy, how do I look after George? I can't. In order for George to be the best version of himself, I need to be the best version of me. And the best version of me is this joyful person that I was born to be. My mentor Donna always say that I am a joy ray. But somehow, the conditionings, the programmings in our world had meant that I didn't know how to tap into my joy. And through self-love, I learned what love really is. And through that, I was able to really tap into my joy. And I really think love and joy are interconnected. When we are full of love, we are able to tap into joy. When we are full of love, we're able to tap into the love of all things. And that's what joy really is, the love of all things unconditionally, right? It allows me to enjoy life more. It allows me to enjoy every moment more because there's so much more appreciation and gratitude and love for all the things. So if you think you're in a lovely space, then my challenge to you is to tap into more love, more self-love, and just really challenge yourself and ask yourself this question. How can I step it up to the next level? Right? There's always more. There's always more. There's always more money. There's always more wealth. There's always more health. There's always more abundance. There's always more love. There's always more joy. And if you're not in such a good place and you think like joy is not something that you will have and love is not something that you really have, tap into self-love and really challenge yourself to see what more can you give yourself? What gives you joy? What gives you what makes you smile at the end of the day? And how can you give yourself love before anyone else will offer that to you? And not only to love yourself, not only just to fill up your own love tank, but how can you make it so overflowing it's contagious? I think for me, this is the biggest lesson, the biggest thing I've learned in my 30s. And the most valuable. Like without it, I believe this forms the foundation of my life now. Right. And that's why I truly believe my 30s has been the rebirthing. It's about rebuilding this foundation and now I can build on top of it. Right. I truly believe this has been the foundation of the life that I now have created. It's, love is the foundation of everything. It allowed me to have an amazing career, to love my career, to love my business, to love my family, to love Scott, to love all the things in life. And to tap into joy in a way it's no longer a mask. It's no longer pretentious. Everything is oozing out from the heart because I am now open to love. I am now open to all the things and I'm now open to giving and receiving at the same time and not feel guilty or lack or selfish in any other way. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoy watching this video. And if you want to find me in all the ways, just search up The Womanly Way. That's the name of my podcast. That is the name of my YouTube channel. That's how you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. And that's also actually on LinkedIn, look up Angela Wang. That's how you can find me on LinkedIn. Love you all so, so, so much. Look after yourself, love yourself, and enjoy life. I'll see you next time. Bye.